now that we've got some reference images dropped into our scene, let's go ahead and start to create some geometry. So I'm going to start by going here into the side view, and what we want to do is create kind of a strip of polygons that go about probably from the base of this neck all the way around this profile. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is go ahead and start by using just a spline. So I'll go up to our Create panel, and we'll go to Shapes and Splines, and I'm just going to create a line. Okay, and I want the initial point type to be smooth and the drag type to be Bezier. So I'm going to go ahead and just click at the different points. So I'm going to start here at the base here. I'll go ahead and click along this head, just periodically placing points. And working with splines is takes a little bit of getting used to. It's not exactly like working with NURBS curves and placing these. The interpolation works a little bit differently, but quickly get used to it. So I'm just going to come in here and kind of place some points around, and you can move these around later if you want to. And so I'll just kind of come up around the nose, and anywhere that you know you want to have some sort of geometry, you can place a point here. Okay, I'm going to right click to end that spline, and now what I want to do is create another spline just for the bottom of the chin here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off this Start New Shape so that this spline will be a part of this one as well. And I'm going to start here, and I'm ending right kind of at the corner part of the lips, or the sharp where that lip actually starts. Okay, so I'll go ahead and come in here, and I'm just going to draw this down to the front of the chin, kind of like that. Alright, let's go ahead and go to the Modify panel, and you can see we've created an editable spline, so we can now go into our vertex subobject and move these around. So for instance, if I want to take this guy right here and move this around, I can do that. Okay, if I want to take this segment and let's maybe add another point in there, I can go in and divide that just by going down here to divide. I'll add another vertex right inside there, and I can grab that and just kind of move it out. A better match up with the artwork that I have. Okay, this I maybe want to move this down a little, something like that. And we may want to add another point in here. Let me undo that. And I'm just going to match up this brow shape a little bit better just by moving some of these points around. I'm going to add a point right inside here just by dividing that. And I'll grab that point and move it in. So I'm just kind of tweaking this so that it matches up with the profile that we have here. Alright, and keep in mind that this doesn't have any geometry right now. It's just a simple curve here. A simple spline, actually. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of match this up a little bit more, okay, with the geometry. Maybe I want to add one right inside there, maybe. And I'm working with just smooth points, so I don't have to worry about the spline handles or anything like that. If you want to work with those, you can make these all Bezier just by right-clicking and making these Bezier. You can see you've got handles that you're able to manipulate as well. Okay? Or you can just have those smooth, in which case you don't have as much control over them. Okay, so it's all up to you. Alright, so now that I've got the spline set, you can see I've just gone from kind of the base of the neck around the head. You can see it's got kind of an egg-shaped head all the way around the nose and down to the front here. And you can see that I've just ended that right here so that it ends right at this lip and then begins again at the bottom lip. So now that we have this, what I can do is actually extrude geometry along this. So if we take a look in our perspective and just zoom extents to this, you can see, change the color here, something you can see a little bit better. You can see the spline that we have, and you can see that that's completely flat. Okay. Now we want to add a little bit of geometry to this. So let's go ahead and use a modifier to do this. So I'm going to go to the modifier list, and let's add an extrude modifier. So right now nothing happened. You can see that the extrude modifier is at the top of the modifier stack, and that's because there's no amount. So I'm going to add just a small amount here. And I just want a little strip of polygons to come along here. Okay? So you can see just something like this. If I hit J to turn off my selection bracket and F4 to turn on edged faces, you can see what's happening here. We're getting a lot of geometry in here. Okay, and up here, maybe a little bit more than we want. You can also add segments along this direction if you want to do that. Okay, you can output a patch. Okay, you can output a mesh, or you can output NURBS. Okay, so just depending on what type of geometry, that you want. Okay, and this is probably too much resolution, but we can go ahead and get rid of some of that here later on. Okay, so once we've got that extruded, now I'm not going to extrude it too far, but I'm just going to make sure that it's on just that one side. You can see how it's extruded from that origin there to one side. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that a little bit higher, maybe something like maybe almost the width of the nose, maybe work for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and now just bake this down. So we can collapse this stack by just going to collapse all, and sure you want to continue, yes. And now what we have is an editable mesh, which we can then convert to an editable poly, which will give us all the tools that we have available in our editable poly. Now in this case, I want to kind of decrease the resolution on this, so you can go in and just control click on some of these different edges. Okay, and if you hold down control backspace, you can delete those edges as well as any vertices that are associated with them. So you can come in, and any of these areas that we may not need all this resolution, you can come in and clean that up a little bit. Places like in here, you want to keep a little bit of resolution, but you probably don't need all of this, and we can always add more later. So you can come in and start to just delete some of that resolution and just clean things up a little bit. Okay, so you can see there, once you see this in here, you'll notice that there are several different ways that we could probably do this. You could also start from kind of a cylinder to get that shape, right? And then you just cut off part of it and take these edges and start to extrude them out and down and so forth. So again, there are a lot of different ways that we can come in and build this, but using a spline is kind of a neat way to get a smooth curve and then create geometry from that. All right, so what I'm going to do is just kind of clean this up, and I'm just basically deleting kind of every other line here, and just control backspace, and that will kind of delete those. Okay, so let's go ahead and just do that here, just so that we all end up with the kind of the same look here. Okay, I go in and just kind of delete every other one of these to get something a little bit lower res. And once we get in here, let's see, we've got a little bit more resolution in here to get rid of. And they get really tight in these corners because they're trying to, get around that curve in many cases here. So just come in and delete some of these. I'll go ahead and do it here within the lesson so that we're not you're aware of kind of what's going on here. And then down here we can do the same thing. Okay, just come in and just kind of delete a few of these. You can see we've got a big gap right there, which we may want to add. We want to add some geometry there. In that case, one of the ways that we can do this is simply to select those edges. So select both of those edges, and then we've got editable poly here, so we can go down to edit edges and just run connect, and this will allow us, you can see that we've got the number of segments here. I just want to add maybe a couple segments, and we can slide this up and down, and we'll say OK, and that'll add that resolution in there. Okay, so once we've got this dialed down to kind of a more reasonable count as far as our resolution that we have, the next step will actually be to come in and start building a cage off here. Now if you look at this, you can see that it's colored on the inside, and then the outside is kind of black, so that tells us that our geometry is flipped. So I'm going to go ahead and just select all these polygons, and under edit polygons I'm just going to flip those. and that'll flip our normals around so that it's a little bit closer to what we want. Now, looking in here, you'll see that some of these points have been lost. So I can select our guy here, go to vertex, and I can just pull some of these in and just shape these a little bit more. Now that we've got the polygons in there, I can come in and start to kind of shape some of these and get some of those sharper corners in there. But be careful that you don't get any dents and dings, because the advantage of using those splines is that we get a very smooth result. And now that we've got polygons, it's going to have a tendency to get some of these little dings in here. If you find that you have too much resolution up here on the front, let's go ahead and grab some of that and just get rid of that. And then that gives you a little bit less resolution to have to deal with at this point, and then we can always go in and add some more later. Okay, so I'll just kind of shape this out, create a nice shape for the lower lip. Okay, so just get it to something like that point there. So you've just got a single strip of polygons flowing around the perimeter of the head. Okay, and then we've kind of cleaned up and reduced the amount of geometry that we have our head a little bit. And now in the next lesson, we can come in from this profile and start creating geometry that's going to come down and connect the different parts. So we can start creating kind of a framework for our head using some of the landmarks that we have. So just get your mesh to this point, or you can take advantage of the project files that we have saved at every step, and then we'll go from there in the next lesson and start creating the framework for the head. So we'll go ahead and do that next.